Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Weather. Welcome to Take Back America. Thank you, Roy and Dale Rogers. Love that couple. They stayed married all their life. Because in Las Vegas, Nevada, this week, the Bundy trial has been going very good for the Bundys. Ryan Bundy's been released from jail to a halfway house, and John Lamb reports that he just got his first home-cooked meal from his wife in 22 months. Convicted of nothing. We know you're not getting anything on the corporate non-media. The corporate ABC, Fox News, CNN, BBC, all that. They're doing a total blackout intentionally. Part of the Agenda 21. They don't want you to know the most important property rights trial in this half century is taking place right now. Started near Bunkerville, Nevada. Though I wasn't there yet in Las Vegas for this trial, we have people reporting daily. So stay tuned, and you're going to hear the only real news reports on one of the most important trials, and Supervisor Adams should be paying particularly close attention. Here we go with the first report.
He repeated over and over again, we have no record of any recordings. He repeated that. Because that's the whole argument here. Someone was put on the stand, and by accident, she mentioned watching surveillance. So then the defense team is like, well, wait a minute, where's this surveillance footage that she's talking about? And as they keep digging, more and more comes out. So this was by accident. This was not information that was given. This is information that came out by accident. We have the prosecuting attorney yesterday sitting there very carefully saying, we have no record of any recordings. Now, whether the FBI or someone else does, we don't know, but we don't have. He didn't say that, but this is, he kept saying over and over carefully, we have no record of any recordings. So the judge denies the motion and is ready to throw it out, and her reasoning for that is, she states, wanting or believing there is more is not enough. It has to be in possession of the federal government or prosecution. The problem with that is we have a head BLM agent who is in charge, Daniel P. Love, who, if you Google his name and you do your research on him, he was the one in charge here during this time, and he has a history of destroying evidence. There is a history in many different cases of Dan Love destroying and getting rid of evidence. And then you have a judge here saying, wanting or believing there is more is not enough. It has to be in possession of the federal government or prosecution. And then the prosecuting attorney repeating over and over, we have no record of any recordings. So anytime an attorney, a defense attorney, goes to ask a question, the prosecuting attorney says, we have no record of any recordings. How convenient, right? And here we have Dan Love in charge, who all the way back to, as far as we know, 2009 with Dr. Red's case, who has a history of destroying evidence. It's not, it's out there. It's not private information. It's been proved, and it's been proved time and time again. He has a history of destroying evidence, abusing his power and destroying evidence in different cases, several different cases. So that's a problem. Thankfully, the judge reversed that. When the defense attorneys pleaded with her, we have proof. We have proof that there are recordings. We have this document that we just received yesterday that says an FBI agent went out to to check one of the cameras because it was down, it wasn't running. So that's proof right there that somebody was watching the camera, someone was surveilling the situation, or they wouldn't have known that the camera was down. So in this document that they had received, so it would be 2 days ago now, it also states a yellow ATV ran over one of them or something like that. So we have this document that shows and is proof that there are recordings and there were records, whether they were written or recorded. There's information out there about these cameras. And the defense team said, we have a witness, these cameras. So the prosecution was saying it was only one camera. Then the defense attorney says, well, you're stating that it was 2 different locations, so how is there one camera with 2 different locations? And they said, oh, well, we fixed the camera that was ran over and we relocated the camera. So it's the same camera, we just put it in a different location. So then the defense attorney brings up, I don't know what she was reading from, I don't know if it was the discovery or what it was, but she brings up, and she says, well, right here it says, in her notes, she says, camera is inoperable and unable to be replaced. I don't know if that was from the discovery or what she was reading from. So then the prosecuting attorney says, well, at that time it was inoperable and unable to be replaced, but they ended up replacing it. They ended up being able to fix it. So he's determined that there's only 2 locations and 1 camera. And keep in mind, Morgan Philpott brought this up, Ammon's attorney. He said, because we argued in court, they argued for several hours about how many cameras and why there's no recordings and no information. And finally, he said, I hate to state the obvious, but you're spending all this time and all this money on these cameras and this equipment, and you're telling me that nobody was watching them, nobody was making any notes or recordings, and there's nothing. They were just there just for fun. I mean, it goes back to when LaBoy was killed. We are living in 2017, and we are supposed to believe best footage of all of that was 6,000 feet in the air, however many feet in the air it was, with no sound. I mean, we have cell phones that take better footage than that. And we're supposed to believe that they have all this expensive surveillance equipment out there and nobody's watching it. It's not recording, it's just there. It's just there for fun. So that was Morgan Philpott stating the obvious. Finally, the judge allows the witness, Arthur Sessions, to go on the stand, and he states that he sees 3 different cameras. Well, he says he's not sure if they were the same camera or different because they were several feet away, but he said he saw them in 3 different locations. So whether they were the same camera or not, it's still a lie. The prosecution was dead set that it was 2 locations only 2 locations. This witness, whether it was the same camera or not, he saw it in 3 different locations. And the prosecuting attorney says, well, you're not a surveillance technician, right? And just trying to, I mean, their whole case is built on lies, deceit, half information, half truth. And he goes and starts harassing this witness, saying, you're not a surveillance technician, right? And he says, now how far away do you think these cameras that you saw were? And the witness, he says, one of them was really close, the other were pretty far away. And the prosecuting attorney says, well, you didn't go right up to it and examine it, right? And he says, well, no, it was far, I saw it from a distance. Trying to make Arthur Sessions look like he doesn't know what he's talking about because he's not a technician and they were so far away. Well, then right after that, Ryan Bundy stands up, and good for Ryan. He's good for him. He stands up And he says, now, basically asked him, so why couldn't you go up and observe the cameras that were out there? And come to find out, Arthur says, because there were no trespassing signs put out everywhere. So this is the government's case. Their whole case is built on lies and deceit and half-truths. And so as of 2 days ago, we now have, because of a mess-up of one of their witnesses on the stand, we now have a possible witness that we can call, an FBI agent. Agent Burke is the one who went out to examine the camera. So we now have an FBI agent we can call as a witness that we didn't have before. We now have information for the first time that tells us that the FBI was involved in there at the Bundy Ranch. We now have information that tells us that there was a SWAT team, that there was presence of EOC and TOC. So we now should be able to know the names of who was in the EOC, who was in the TOC, who the FBI agent in charge was. I mean, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. As of 2 days ago, there was no information about the FBI being involved. There was no information about an EOC or TOC. And the defense attorneys were saying, we want this information. We have a right to have this information that has been withheld. Go listen to their live feeds. That's just something that I wanted to add. But I want to talk about why this is important. And the reason this is important is we have a lot of men. I think I want to say 19. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that number. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have 19 men who have been sitting in jail for almost 2 years now. 2 years, okay? 19 men. Several of those men had babies when they were arrested who are now kids, who are totally different. They've missed out on those baby memories and all of that time. We have families who have lost their providers in their home, their husbands, their dads. We have kids, so many kids who have lost uncles, grandpa, and for almost 2 years now. And the problem with this camera situation and what we're dealing with, the important part of it is, yes, we don't want to be surveillanced, and the government kept saying, well, it was on public property. You walk out here in Las Vegas and there's cameras everywhere. Well, that's different. We're out here in Las Vegas and it's not our personal home that's being watched, and nobody wants the government to be able to put cameras in front of your home and watch and listen to what you're doing. But that's how they manipulate things. That's how they work, or how they have been working. That's what I've witnessed. But the important part of that is we have 19 men who were indicted because of a testimony that was given before a grand jury. The testimony that was given by the government before the grand jury, they were indicted on conspiracy charges. And part of those conspiracy charges are that they conspired to hurt federal officers by providing false information, and providing false information to the public to recruit people to come and help. And we have this superseding indictment that says some of the false information that was given to recruit was that there were snipers and that the Bundys were being surrounded. So now, as of 2 days ago, we have, because somebody messed up on the stand and leaked a little too much information, we have information that that's actually true. They were surrounded. They were being monitored by cameras, and they were surrounded by the government. Whether it was BLM agents, FBI, SWAT team, whoever they were surrounded. So that's not false information. And then we also have information that because of this mess up on the stand, we have information that there were snipers. And the government says in court yesterday, well, you call them snipers, we call them law enforcement. Law enforcement they're always armed. You call them snipers, we call them armed law enforcement. No matter what you call them, we have 19 men that have been incarcerated, held hostage by an out-of-control branch of government for almost 2 years now because of conspiracy charges, and those conspiracy charges relate to recruiting other Americans to come and help protect and defend property, personal property, with false information. And in that superseding indictment, it says snipers, some of that false information is snipers and being surrounded. Now, as of 2 days ago, we have proof and information that that's true. So we have 19 men who have been sitting in jail for almost 2 years because of lies that were given in front of a grand jury by our government. And now, after trial is supposed to already be underway, 2 days ago, we received information that that's actually true. So you're telling me that these men that have been held for almost 2 years are being held falsely because of false information, not from American people, but by our government? The false information they gave to a grand jury. So applying that to today, I hope someone with power and courage sees this, because it's wrong. The whole situation is wrong. These men do not have criminal history. They're not dangerous people. Nobody was killed, nobody was hurt, and they are being held because of lies and false testimony that was given before a grand jury. And we've received proof of that 2 days ago. They've been held for 2 years without pretrial release and without a speedy trial. 2 years. And 2 days ago, we received information that shows proof that the testimony that was given before the grand jury that indicted and allowed them to arrest all these men was false. They were lies. The Bundy home was surrounded, and the Bundy home was being recorded. Now, whether you want to admit that somebody was watching the surveillance video and recording, taking notes, whether they'll admit that or not, they probably won't. But we do have information that that's true. So the testimony that was given before the grand jury is false. These men being arrested and held in jail are being held in jail because of false information and lies. And so today we have a hearing, and we are going before the judge and asking the judge to release Ryan Payne, to release Ryan Bundy, to release Ammon Bundy, and to release Cliven Bundy, to not hold them hostage any longer, and to allow the truth. All we want is the truth. We want the full truth and nothing but the truth. And there's no reason these men should be held. They haven't been able to be scared into a plea deal. They're going to fight this. They're going to fight for the truth. And they haven't been able to be scared into a plea deal because that's what they want to do. They want to fight for the truth to come out in court. And they're not going to run from it. They're not dangerous. These are good men. These are good people that have been held away from their families for almost 2 years now because of false testimony given before a grand jury. It's time to release them. It's time to let them go and be able to prepare for the truth and be able to be with their families. And, you know, we thank you for everyone that has been praying out there. The corruption is so obvious and it's so deep. And you see that when you're sitting in court.
Thank you, Miss Sarah. I very much appreciate your report Monday of this week from Las Vegas. And I want you people, get a big white postcard and just send President Trump a message. Here's the message. President Trump, full pardons for the Bundys and the militia. Now, what she was talking about was something that was not supposed to get into this trial. And that is that they have video recordings of the whole scene from at least 2 different angles. And if there's any of you out there from Nevada or wherever you're from and you've got some evidence or proof, I want you to call me and let me know. I need to interview you because they're trying to hide this tape. And it's very interesting. It comes up and then Judge Gloria Navarro just tries to shush it down. But the hidden tapes is going to become a major issue for mistrial. Back to another interview.
So we're out here at the federal courthouse, Las Vegas, Nevada, regarding the detention hearing that's going on for Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, Cliven Bundy, and Ryan Payne. The courtroom is packed, mostly full of Bundys, which is just awesome. They're a beautiful family, and they all have their children and grandchildren in here. Guys all look, I don't know, they look like they've been in jail for 22 months. I don't know how I can say the guys look. Steve Myrie is not here today, but the other prosecutors are. They have a very large team. The beginning of the hearing started out a little rough because the prosecution tried saying that they weren't ready for this, that they don't want to do this right now because they weren't prepared to actually argue detention. They thought it was just a detention hearing, but they weren't prepared to argue detention. So the prosecution is actually requesting that after the defense goes and shares each reason why they believe their defendant should be set free, that the prosecution wants to have a recess and come back at a future date to discuss their rebuttal on why these defendants should not be set free. The defense has been arguing. Ryan Payne's attorney stood up and said it was made very clear multiple days ago that this was a detention hearing, that it should not be prolonged any farther, that the prosecution had ample time to prepare, and if they didn't prepare, that's not the defense's fault. The judge is starting off the day on edge. She's already basically convicted these individuals in many of the statements that she's making, which of course is always very frustrating when she makes comments like Cliven Bundy is willing to assault federal officers, instead of saying it is alleged that Cliven Bundy is willing to assault federal officers. The defense's side is saying that there has been new developments that should allow them to move forward with this detention hearing. The new developments would be 2 entire trials that have gone on without one conspiracy charge that has been found. And so clearly the evidence that they believed they had in place to hold these guys on detention before is different now, because the evidence has not proven that anybody has committed a conspiracy. And in fact, most of the defendants have been released who were involved with the first 2 trials. Cliven Bundy's attorney, Brett Whipple, went up and read off the reasons that he believes that Cliven Bundy should be released. He discussed his family ties, the fact that he wants to fight this case out in court, that he believes he's going to win, and he's willing to show up to court every day, and also his health. He came in with all of his teeth, and his attorney, Brett Whipple, said that he has none of his back teeth, and he's been having to chew with his front teeth. That all of his teeth have been pulled because in jail they don't offer you treatment. They just pull teeth when there's an infection, which is what they've been doing to Cliven. So Brett Whipple argued that by the time this trial is done in 4 months, Cliven Bundy is literally going to have no teeth left, and that because of that, that's definitely a health issue, that he should not be detained, that he should be at home if the jail cannot properly take care of. When the judge started to rebuttal that, because that's what the judge does, right, is argue back, she stated that she does not believe that Cliven's life is in jeopardy to be in jail, and that ample evidence was presented, and she started to read off a list that she already had prepared. And she didn't discuss things that he has allegedly done. She actually discussed things that he did. She said Cliven Bundy has already proven he does not acknowledge the federal government. He has already proven that he will assault a federal officer. He's already proven that within 8 to 24 hours he can assemble an entire group of bodyguards and people who will come and support and defend him. Before she could make her ruling, which it was on its way to saying, therefore, Cliven Bundy, I believe, is what she was about to say. Before she could say that, the guards turned and targeted one of his daughters who had been, I think she was shaking her head, and they pointed to her and said, "You're out." Now, before these proceedings start, the judge reads off a list of all of the things that we can't do, and one of the things we cannot do is show any expression whatsoever. She said this is not a sporting event, this is a courtroom. However, I would beg to argue with her that this is quite a sporting event and not a sport that I would like to play. That if you show any expressions whatsoever, you will be thrown out of court. I'm not sure what our framers thought when they said a public trial, but I'm pretty sure that they probably were okay with people showing expression in a public courtroom, hence the importance of having the public there to be able to witness what's going on. And if in their humanity they decide to smile or shake their head in a public environment, you would think that's okay, but not in a federal courthouse. It's absolutely run by tyrants. So they tried to throw one of Cliven Bundy's daughters out of the courtroom, and she stood up on her own and yelled out, pointed, and said, "Judge Navarro, you are a liar. My father has never hurt anybody, nor would he hurt anybody, and you are lying right now." Of course, the marshals surrounded her and tried to grab her. She stood back and said, "Don't touch me," and they proceeded to throw her out of the courtroom. She is now banned from the courtroom for the entire rest of the trial, but she did get to stand there for I don't know how, it felt like a long time, and continue saying to the judge that she is a liar, that the things she's reading are lies, and that she will be judged. She will be judged for what she is doing. The measure that we use on others gets brought back on us when we stand before our Maker someday, and that's exactly what she was pointing out to Judge Navarro, is that she will be judged for the lies and the slander that she is bringing on God's people. These people did not do the things that they are accused of doing. In fact, they only came and supported what was happening because the assaults that the federal government was actually bringing on the people. They proceeded to throw her out of the courtroom. I left and followed her to try to stay right by her because I could hear yelling outside. Came out here with her outside, and so she's not going to be allowed back in the courtroom. But understand, she didn't do anything wrong, that she has a First Amendment right to speak, and that in a public courtroom, back in the day, people would yell things out in the courtroom, and it wasn't unheard of. But now, in the day and age we live in, we are to speak when spoken to. We are simply here because we pay them their salaries. They're federal employees, and we are here to pay their bills. We literally pay them to prosecute us. And then we also do what they say in the process. It's quite mind-boggling. Sitting through these trials can be a little bit daunting. You can feel very hopeless sitting in there when you actually hear and realize what's going on, and you see that your judge is actually behaving like a prosecutor and that she has already convicted these individuals of these crimes that they're accused of. It's very discouraging.
Thank you very much, Kelly Stewart. That was Monday of this week in November of 2017, the trial, and I'm wearing my Bundy cowboy hat intentionally. You should be wearing a Bundy cowboy hat. These cowboys, Mormon boys from Bunkerville, Nevada, are doing a righteous service for America. Like I've seen very few farmers, ranchers ever stand up. I mean, Supervisor Adams stood up, but not a lot of people joined him. And I was one of the few people to cover Supervisor Adams when they tried to beat him up in court. And he won eventually, if you call spending millions of dollars on an attorney who does not get his attorney's fee paid from the bad guys on the other side winning, but he's still farming. And I'm just amazed that Supervisor Adams hasn't stepped up to the plate here to do something to help the Bundys. Now we're going to go on to Tuesday of this week. Today's Friday, the 17th. We're going to the 14th, I believe, and we have another witness in front of the federal courthouse in Las Vegas. We're bringing you the only news since all the corporate media is laying down on the job, folding their hands and twiddling their thumbs and saying, we don't know. And, Steve Colbert, just to mention it in passing, man, what was your producer in the back behind the camera saying, no coverage, cut it off? Come on, Steve Colbert, you can't even make fun of the Wicked Witch of the West. Anyway, here's the next one from the federal courthouse in Las Vegas.
This is Brian Hyde, and They just finished up in court down in Las Vegas, so I'm going to go ahead and bring you this update. I'm going to take a little bit more time because I want to flesh out some of the details of what was going on today and give you a little bit of the backstory. I will tell you this. After lunch, the defense had their opportunity to make their opening statements, and Brett Whipple was the only attorney for the defense who was able to speak, just in the interest of time. They didn't have time to get somebody else in there, but by all accounts, he knocked it out of the park. And this is one of the interesting things that he did, is he took the jury back, starting with the history of Bunkerville. And this means he had to walk them all the way back to 1877. That's when Cliven's family originally began ranching on that area. And Cliven, growing up, all he wanted to do was run that ranch. And in 1962, he got his chance. He inherited the ranch. And there's something you have to understand. And this I think this is a brilliant play on the part of the defense to take it this way. This has to do with rights, water rights. This wasn't about Cliven claiming to own the land. It wasn't about him, trying to claim that only he could be on the land. The water rights go back to 1877 and have been used continuously. This is part of the doctrine of beneficial use. And in a nutshell, beneficial use is when someone first puts those resources, such as the water or the forage, the grass that the cows would eat, to use, the air that they would breathe. When they put that to beneficial use, they have an enforceable right to use that. Now, this was all duly recorded and on record in the county offices. But those rights mean you don't have to have the title to the land in order to use it. And this is important because this plays into why did Cliven Bundy take the stand that he took, not just in April of 2014, but going back for 25 years. And this is what Brett Whipple was explaining in the defense opening statements. Water and water rights, he said, are part of Nevada's history and part of Nevada's challenge. And water rights are absolutely essential in understanding how the Bundys have been able to ranch there and why they have been able to continually ranch. This is the thing about those kind of rights. When you put something to beneficial use, when you have those rights, they have to be exercised. You can't just say, well, I've got them here on paper and then sit on them. If they're not used, you lose them. So they had to continue to use those water rights. And it was back in 1992 that the government came into Cliven and told him, the BLM said, look, we have to reduce your grazing allotment and we're going to have to remove your cattle from the land. Now, ostensibly what they were doing was, we're doing this to protect the desert tortoise. But Cliven hired an attorney back in 1992, and that attorney told him, Cliven, this isn't about the tortoise. This is about water. Because if the cattle are taken off that land, if your cattle aren't using that water, guess what? You lose those water rights. So if you wonder, why didn't Cliven just play ball and, pay the fees like everybody else does? I can't tell you how many ranchers I've heard say that. He understood that if he did, he would lose those water rights, and therefore he would lose the ranch. So here's one of the really interesting things that came out. Now, keep in mind that this history lesson is showing that over that 25 years of Cliven going back and forth with the government, in and out of court, there were numerous times that they battled this out. It never got violent, not once. And when reporters would ask Cliven, well, what do you intend to do, to protect your cattle? Because the threat of coming and taking his cattle was there for a long time. His answer was always, whatever it takes. And if you've been around the courthouse there in Vegas, you'll see there are big signs put up there that say, whatever it takes. He didn't specify. They were waiting for him to say, well, I'd take up a gun and I'd shoot somebody. But he never said that. And he never intended to have that be the solution. He just said whatever it would take, or whatever it takes. And the paranoid imaginations of, certain federal officials kind of filled in the blanks. Oh my gosh, what must that mean? We don't know. They assumed the worst, but that's probably because force is one of the primary tools they have to accomplish what they need to do. So here's something interesting. If you remember the video back in April of 2014, remember the dump trucks coming down? This is when Ammon and a bunch of other protesters stopped the dump trucks as they were coming down off the mountain there. And they were stopping him because Ammon wanted to see what is in the back of those dump trucks. There was suspicion that they were killing the cattle and were actually trucking the cattle away. But when Ammon, I believe this is before he got tased, when he climbed up and looked into that dump truck, do you know what he saw? Not cattle feed. He saw piping and water tanks. The BLM Rangers had gone in there and with a backhoe had torn out the infrastructure, all the improvements that Cliven and other ranchers before him had put in on that land that benefited not only the cattle, but benefited every living creature on that land. And they were tearing it out. And the really amazing part, none of that was in the court order. That was not what they were supposed to be removing. The cattle were supposed to be impounded according to the court order. Tearing out all of the water infrastructure, not a part of it. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the trial. Cliven stopped paying the feds, but he put that money into escrow, and he offered a check. I believe it was to his county first and then to the state of Nevada. Both of them said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't take this. We're not set up to do this. But the point is, he wasn't ever freeloading. The improvements that were done on that land were done out of his own pocket. The willingness to pay the grazing fees, he was willing to pay for the forage and the water that he was using. But he wasn't willing to continue to do business with an entity that was trying to put him out of business and swindle him out of his water rights. One other quick note here. This is something that you're going to want to watch for in the trial. The prosecution came out swinging, well, it was a very violent thing. But there are a lot of holes that are going to be poked in that when it is shown that not only have the Bundys conducted themselves non-violently over the past quarter century, but you're also going to find that the BLM was given the order to stand down and cease its operations on April 11th, 2014. So why on April 12th did they harden up and take that fighting posture? It was done. It was over. All they needed to do was leave, and Cliven and those who had come to support him would have come and collected the cattle. But instead they took a fighting posture. And the name Dan Love is going to come up again and again. I don't know if he's going to be called as a witness. I know a lot of people have been asking, is it possible the defense could get him on the stand? I don't know the answer to that, but where Dan was the man in charge of that operation, certainly some of the things that he was calling for and some of the decisions that he made are going to be brought into question here. One final thought for you. Why did so many people show up to help Cliven Bundy in April of 2014? Now, the prosecution says, well, it's because Cliven rang the dinner bell and told everybody, bring your guns and we're going to fight the feds. But that's not what happened. As it has now been shown, as evidence is slowly starting to trickle out, there were FBI agents, armed FBI agents, in fact, a rapid response SWAT team positioned out there around the Bundys' ranch. There was surveillance equipment. This was long before any standoff. So when the Bundys put out the call and said, we are surrounded and we are concerned, we have armed agents, surrounding our ranch, they asked people to help them. And I was there. I saw people who came from all across the country. They did not come because they had violence in their hearts and a desire to kill federal agents. They came because there were fellow Americans who were in dire need and who were under siege from a relentless bureaucracy that was not going to back down. But enough Americans showed up, and they did it because they're Americans, and that's what you do. This is something that is so common in the West. It's second nature. When someone needs help, you step up and you help them. And when Cliven asked for help, but you got to understand, he had been asking for help and pleading with people for the last 25 years to listen to what was going on and understand the fight. And so when he asked for help, there were people who understood and who showed up. And the fact that people showed up armed was not any indication that they came with murder in their hearts. It was an indication that they realized they were going up against an agency or an entity that uses force as a first resort. And they were there to protect innocent life. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how the defense tells this story. Remember this. If you're feeling discouraged, oh man, the trial, well, what could happen? It only takes one juror, just one, with a conscience, to say, I'm not buying what the prosecution
Thank you,
says.
Brian Hyde. Thank you very much. Still wearing my Bundy cowboy hat. You should get a Bundy cowboy hat. You know, the Bundys were wearing T-shirts, too, that said, I am a domestic terrorist. The real terrorists are the Bureau of Land Management. We no longer have the image of Smokey the Bear, you know, giving us warnings about matches in the forest. We have a new image, and this Smokey's got a SWAT team. He's like a Nazi stormtrooper. And 50 years of good PR trying to build up the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management has all been flushed down the toilet with this rotten Nazi trial in the heart of the West in Las Vegas, Nevada. Just 100 miles or so south of Bunkerville, where all this razzmatazz about cattle. And do you pay the grazing fees to the state, the county, or the feds? It isn't the feds' land. They're trying to steal the land so they can sell it to Uranium One or the Communist Chinese or the Russian communists, you know. It's got nothing to do with the tortoise. Remember?
Before anything was done, and I know that's something Roger Roots also touched on in his video that he did yesterday. Just there's this huge gap, and instead of them having to go through the process again, they were able to basically just open it up and just keep on going, like they hadn't had this huge time lapse, almost like these defendants who were free for 2 years and were not a threat to society, and now they're all of a sudden a threat to society. The federal government fails to act. And nobody looks back and says, well, why were his cattle allowed the last 10 years? Why are you doing this now? Why is it such a big deal now to get 100 head of cattle? People put this in perspective here. Millions of dollars on this case, over 100 head of cattle. And at one point, I want to say she reported there were 900 head of cattle and only 100 that came back as being branded to Cliven Bundy. So you have all these wild cattle that are also out grazing. Who pays their fees? Who gives the permit for them and gives them their permission to be out on the land? This is not about cattle. 100 head of cattle is not worth a multi-million-dollar pursuit, and men spending 2 years behind bars as though they're criminals with no record and no threat to the public. I hope you guys can grasp that this is not about cattle.
Thank you very much. She said it exactly right. It's not about cattle. It's about stealing property rights so the federal Bureau of Land Management thugs can sell those mining rights to foreign entities like Communist China, ENN Corporation, or Uranium One. It's about stealing the essence of American property rights. This is every American's issue, and I hope you're paying close attention. The first witness that was called was a gal named Marianne Rugwell. And she blurted out some things. And by the way, what is said in the opening statements, I am sure, if this isn't declared a mistrial, when Judge Gloria Navarro, running her kangaroo court, she will instruct the jurors, everything said in the opening statements and the closing statements is not evidence. You must disregard it. Just pay attention to the facts of the evidence that I allow on the court record. That's what's going to go down. But yeah, Marianne Rugwell, first witness up, she blurted out some things that is now going to open up Pandora's box. And Judge Navarro has got a problem. Her own prosecutors have lied on the court record. They've said over and over, there is no video. Well, their own witnesses says there is video. So, that's a real problem. Please take time to write the Bundys. Cliven is still locked up, Ammon is still locked up, and Cliven is having teeth pulled because a privately run prison will only give him one option for dental pain. They pull the tooth. So this man who's 71 is losing all his teeth because he can't get dental care in CCA, Corrections Whatever of America. I think Vice President Dick Cheney and many other well-to-do people own stock and are getting rich off the persecution and the holding of them in this prison. Remember, the Bundys were already found not guilty of everything in a trial up in Oregon. And then they were not released. They were transferred here, and then they said, we'll drum up this. So with that, we have another report from Las Vegas. I'd rather let you hear it straight from them, the people that are right there watching the trial. But keep in mind, you should be seeing this trial reported on Fox News, CNN. Where's Alex Jones? Where's all these guys that were going to bring us the real scoop, and now they've pooped out on us, huh? Wearing my Bundy cowboy hat. Watch this. Be back in a little while. Looks like, yep, Ryan Bundy's been released from prison to a halfway house.
Oh my goodness!
There he is. He gave a statement in his opening remarks that shut down the court for 2 minutes. Nobody would speak. It was awesome. Even the judge could not speak for 2 minutes. I am told by multiple witnesses who were in the courtroom. There he is, free at last after 22 months, convicted of nothing but held like a dangerous criminal with leg irons and the whole 9 yards.
I didn't think this was ever going to come. And it's here.
Take a picture.
This was, I believe, Wednesday evening. Tuesday or Wednesday evening, maybe it was Monday. And then
Absolutely.
Daughters and wives and sisters.
midweek this week, he gave his opening statement.
It's a good day.
Instead of his attorney, he gave it. And he outlined, as others have said already, he outlined a history and what grazing rights are. They're property rights. You don't pay rent on what you own.
Yeah, why don't we just set it up? Get it set up here. So this isn't justice, but this is definitely a win. And they're the ones always saying that. There's his sisters. Wearing a suit. Ammon is headed back to Pahrump. Cliven and
No, that'd be
Ryan
Monday.
Kane are in Henderson. Praise God. There's Aunt Lily.
Yeah, Ryan was released on Monday.
Oh, yeah. Good group of people out here. That poor man and woman has waited a long time. Their kids are on their way. Sorry, lots of flashes, but we'll just let it. There's Ryan and John, Ken Rhodes. There's Gina and Brand. It's a good day.
Somebody texts to see what the kids are. They're coming. They're coming in 2 bunches, but they're coming. Couldn't find them all, so.
Gotta get the crowd real quick.
Bailey should be here with the first one soon, I'm sure, because Ivana was constantly in that.
I don't know, ask my mom.
Are you there?
Come on, you're never short for words. No, absolutely not.
You're catching me off guard.
Tell us what you said today.
We're already building you a university. Start teaching.
Oh, almighty. Oh, I'm feel a burden come off me. I know that I'm not free yet. I still have an ankle monitor and a whole bunch of rules. But I did. I felt a big burden come off me as soon as she said, you know, I'm going home. But I also realize that I've still got a big burden because our freedoms aren't yet won. I'm still not free myself. My brothers are still not free, and this country is still not free. I realize there's lots of work to be done, and now I can't whine and use the excuse anymore that I don't have computer time. So so now I've really put myself in the pickle.
We're all in the pickle with you, Brian.
Yep. I'll keep working hard, and I've learned a lot. You know, I've said it that it's incarceration I hated every day. Every day I hated it. And yet I'm very thankful for it because I've grown so much. I've grown closer to my Father in heaven. And I've learned a lot about the law. I've learned a lot about people who are incarcerated. And most of them are not what you think. I see the atrocities of the government upon many, many people in there, and I'm appalled by it. I cannot rest. We've got to change the system. We've got to change things where people can be free. Our constitutional rights are not being adhered to. The right to speedy trial, the right to fair trial, the right to bail. I mean, I can go right down through the list and constitutional rights, and so many of them are being violated. The court says they're not, and yet they are. For the right to speedy trial alone, the Sixth Amendment states that in every prosecution, the right of the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy trial. I can tell you what, I haven't enjoyed this. Okay. That right belongs to the accused. It does not belong to the court. It does not belong to the prosecution. It does not belong to Congress. It does not belong to the general public. It says that the accused shall enjoy. The right to speedy trial belongs to the accused. And so therefore only the accused should be able to decide what speedy means, not Congress, not the court. And it's been violated with us terribly bad. That's just one thing of thousands of problems.
Can we say a prayer together?
Yes, please do. So,
Can we stand with you, Ryan?
please
Stand with you, Ryan.
I don't really like.
Why don't we kneel for this prayer?
Oh yeah, we need. That's because you're not 60-something years old.
Shauna, will you offer it?
I would love to. Our Father in heaven, we are so very grateful.
And there they are, people. They're praying just minutes after Ryan Bundy has been released to a halfway house. A good indication that they don't have any evidence to get him convicted of anything. And so what Judge Navarro is doing, in my opinion, is reducing the amount Ryan Bundy can sue the government for malicious prosecution. Remember, held for more than a year, convicted of nothing, while they tried to build up a phony baloney case and hide evidence like the missing video you heard earlier in the show tonight. We'll get back to Bundy prayer, Mr. Ryan Bundy's prayer. Right now, I want you to hear from John Lamb, and I believe it's Attorney Whipple.
Reporting down here on the Bundy trial today in Las Vegas. I've got Mr. Britt Whipple here. He's representing Cliven Bundy. Tell us what's going on and about the opening statements today and some whatever. Go ahead here.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for the chance to visit with you. Today we had Ryan Bundy do his opening statement, and I have to tell you, I've practiced for 20-some years. I've done approximately 80 jury trials, and I've never been so impressed in my entire career with somebody who did so much in such a short amount of time. He was amazing. He was able to really, I think, really cut to the chase, identify the priorities, and try to get the jurors a real understanding of who he is, where he's coming from, how important his family is to him, and why this all occurred.
There was no objections either of the government at all today.
And I think the most amazing part is after he was done, the entire audience, the judge, the prosecutors, nobody said a word for 2 to 3 minutes. We were just so stunned and amazed, you could have heard a pencil drop. Not one reporter got up to run to the door to make a report. Judge didn't say a word for 2 to 3 minutes. It's just complete silence.
Yes.
I've never experienced that before. It was really impressive. It was very good.
I know where I was sitting, there were people crying. There were tears coming down people's cheeks. Yeah, there was.
I was dabbing too. Sure. Yeah, it was good. Very impressive man. I mean, you know, I've represented thousands of individuals, and I know how much pressure and stress it is for somebody, and yet for a person like that to be able to have that much courage and under that type of stressful situation speak so calmly and so well. I'm sure all of you listeners out there are going to be reading his words in the near future because they're certainly worth reading and certainly worth evaluating.
Now you had some more information you wanted to bring about and share with us.
What I think it's important to get out is, you know, a lot of folks are not from Nevada, but some of the folks that watch are from Nevada. And what most Nevadans realize is the significance of protecting and appreciating our home state. And what really jumps out to me is the fact that what happened in Bunkerville is almost the same thing that the federal government's done to us with regard to the nuclear waste dump. You know, they come in and they put Yucca Mountain right in the middle of Nevada. We have to take all the nuclear waste from all these repositories from around the United States and bury them right in the middle of Nevada. And I don't know there's many Nevadans that want that, right? And so what the Bundys did is what all the other Nevadans did with regard to the nuclear waste dump. We stand up, we protest, we talk to the media, we have meetings in the town halls. You know, the state of Nevada owns the water. So when the federal government tried to come in and put nuclear waste in the middle of Nevada, we tried to keep them not having water. We felt that water was not beneficially used when it was used for nuclear waste dump. So, and then we got our state leaders involved. You know, and at the end of the day, the same thing that happened with the nuclear waste dump is the same thing that happened with Bundy's. They spent a lot of money and it went to waste, right? Nothing happened. So I just think it's important to get the word out that what happened in Bunkerville is the same thing that happened with Yucca Mountain. There was a bunch of Nevadans standing up, not afraid to back down, speak their mind, protest in a legal, non-violent manner, and at the end of the day get some results.
Exactly.
And that's what happened in Bunkerville, and that's what happened in Yucca Mountain. I think that's what people need to be aware of.
Can I ask you one question? How did the jury take it when Ryan was speaking?
You know, I think honestly they were mesmerized. The entire crowd was mesmerized. At the end of the day, a couple months from now, we'll be able to get some definitive insight. But you know, from my take, from what I saw, everybody was very impressed.
They were attentive. They were watching. So yesterday you fell asleep.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Great yesterday too.
It was an awesome day today. We had all we've had so far is we've had just Ryan Bundy, and he's the only one so far that has given opening statements. We have Ryan Payne up next. His attorney, Ryan Norwood's going to give opening statements just after lunch here. We expect it just to be just as good as Britt Whipple and Ryan Bundy's opening statements the last day and a half here. What has came out here has been refused to be able to be in the last two trials. Eric Parker.
Thank you, John Lamb. Thank you very much. Reporting there from the courthouse, the federal courthouse in Las Vegas, sometimes known as Lost Wages, Nevada. We have another report with Red Buck speaking, and I want to take you to that as soon. Don't go away. Remember, you're watching the only inclusive coverage of one of the most important trials that's happened in decades, because it affects property rights. Can the federal government just come in and say, no, it's not yours anymore, and we're taking it away, and we're going to criminalize you for trying to stop us from breaking the law? Remember, their order did not allow them to rip out water tanks, water pipes. Their order only allowed them, the BLM, to take the cattle and remove them. And even that order was illegal, unlawful. Let's roll it. Let me tell you, in case I forget, the state witnesses has testified that the state adjudicates water rights. That's a state right, not a federal right. So the BLM, the feds, had absolutely no lawful pretense for going in and ripping out the water tanks that Cliven Bundy and the pipes that his fathers and ancestors before him, going back to 1870 something, they had no right to rip those out. They were breaking not only the court order, but going beyond their authority. So now they're trying to make the Bundys and the militia look like bad people. No, the good people are the ones being forced into jail. We need to arrest the BLM and the FBI, and all those people from the feds need to go to prison. That's my opinion as a Vietnam veteran who thought I was fighting for an honest and fair judiciary. It ain't happening in Gloria Navarro's kangaroo court. Watch this.
Including the prosecution and including the FBI that sat behind the prosecution. So it was incredible. I will go over a few things that I took notes about. Ryan Bundy talked about and mentioned several times whatever it takes. And he said the government's going to use that as a... They want you to believe that that's a threat, that we say whatever it takes is a threat. And he said that's not a threat. Whatever it takes is our determination to protect our rights as Americans and to protect freedom. He even mentioned sitting here in a jail cell and being basically being in jail. That is part of whatever it takes. So he implied that, you know, whatever it takes is not a threat. It's the sacrifice. It's the sacrifice that we're willing to do to be able to protect and defend freedom and our liberties as Americans. And he also said it means so when he first got up, he put a picture of his cute family, Angie and all the kids up there for everyone to see. And he said, whatever it takes is protecting my family, protecting our livelihood that feeds my family. And it's not a threat. It's the determination that we hold to be able to protect our rights as Americans, to protect all of those things, and to take care of my family. He also went into the water rights and the land rights and when the water rights were first established, and he talked about there being no conspiracy. There was absolutely no conspiracy. And that it wasn't about conspiracy or impeding or even paying grazing fees. And he went on to say, if it were about paying grazing fees, the grazing fees were a little over $1,000. And he said, can you imagine how much...
Thank you, Ms. Redbuck. I'm William Wagner, your host here for Take Back America on this Friday night, after the first full week of the Bundy trial that the corporate media is doing a total silent blackout. And you got to ask yourself, with ABC and CBS and NBC and Fox News and CNN and BBC, how is it that they all decide to do a blackout? Just like when the trial in the Ronald Reagan courthouse, I was the only one covering it when the ability, the legal right to run for president of Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, was being questioned in Judge David O. Carter's courtroom, a major issue that 50 years ago would have been on all the network media. I was the only one covering it. No one else covered it. And I brought you those witnesses right outside the Ronald Reagan courthouse. And this is a case like that, except I can't run to Las Vegas and run back here every day or even every week. So these are as close as we can get to statements of what's actually happening. But like Attorney Whipple said, Ryan Bundy wowed them. He absolutely wowed them with his opening statement, which is not evidence, but it gives a historical perspective on how abusive the federal government has been to the Bundy Ranch and the Bundy Cowboys and the militia. So when you call that number, 202-456-1111, and you leave on Donald Trump's comment line, say, please give full pardon to the Bundys. Don't forget the militia. There's 7 or 8 or more militia have been convicted, or they just agreed to plead out. It's funny how they'll keep them in prison forever. But as soon as they plead out, they release them because they just want convictions. The prosecutors think it makes them look good. No, it doesn't make you look good, Mr. Prosecutor. It makes you look like a schmuck, like a tyrant Nazi prosecutor putting Jews in prison for being Jews. This militia was doing the right job at the right time. Cliven Bundy, who's having his teeth pulled out,
so Ryan Bundy
needed help. But right now, he's getting his teeth pulled out in the CCA private prison because they won't take him to a real dentist who will give him the dental care he needs. But they won't release him so he can go do it for himself either. Call 202, see it over here, 202-456-1111 and say, I want President Trump to give full pardons to all the militia and the Bundys. Here we go, another report.
But there is a knowledge, and today apparently he was able to address the jurors and made a very powerful opening statement. Now, you got to remember, the consequences that Ryan and the others are facing are extremely serious. I mean, it could amount to decades in prison. And yet Ryan has chosen to represent himself, and that I think that shows the confidence that he has, not only in his cause, but also in the fact that telling the truth is the best way to go. And I think he trusts that the jury is going to see that the truth is what needs to happen here. So the consensus in the courtroom was that Ryan is exceptional. I've heard people remark that they can't believe that this guy doesn't have official training as an attorney. He has a lot riding on this, but he hit it right out of the park, and he hit on some very important facts. Some of the things he brought up were the Constitution and the principles of freedom that actually brought his family to Nevada in the 1880s in the first place. And he talked about how for 20 plus years, his family has petitioned local officials to help them whenever they ran into conflict with the feds, where the feds were abridging or treading on their rights. And as we saw, even in 2014, they petitioned to local officials, but local officials either said, oh, our hands are tied, or there's just nothing that we can do. But Ryan spent a lot of time talking about rights, and this is really important because he spelled out what it is that makes a right a right. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about your right to water rights or grazing rights, or whether it's the right to assemble or the right to petition for redress or right to express yourself. A right isn't a right unless you claim it, you use it, and you defend it. You have to do that or you lose those rights, no matter what that right is. So one of the things that Ryan was trying to get across to the jury was the fact that this is not about cows. It's not about grazing fees, which they've offered to pay. Cliven's attorney actually showed a copy of the check Cliven offered to pay to his local authorities, who said we can't take it. And the money amount, we're not talking about a massive amount of money, especially when you consider the type of budget that the federal government is operating on and the kind of deficit spending that they engage in. See, Ryan brought up the fact that there were 53 ranchers in Clark County at one point.
Well, he makes it pretty clear, just like Attorney Whipple did. Ryan Bundy, the guy who's paralyzed in one half of his face, he hit a grand slam when he made his opening statement. He laid it out for the jury, just how bad this abuse is. This is a family business. This is grazing rights. These are water rights. Water rights adjudicated by the state. Grazing rights, that's the issue. Who adjudicates? Who can give a permit or deny a permit? The feds or the state? That's what's at stake here. And if the feds prevail, and the Bundys are convicted, we are all in danger. The feds have gone too far. They have gone over the edge and into Nazi land, where they can just grab what's yours and take it, sell it to Uranium One, sell it to the ENN Corporation, or anybody else, whether they're a foreign hostile power or not. And this is dangerous, and Harry Reid's behind this. Now, back to the prayer with Ryan Bundy. I thank you for being with us tonight.
And it's been violated with us, terribly bad. That's just one thing of thousands of problems.
Can we say a prayer together?
Yes, please do. So,
Can we stand with you, Ryan?
please stand with you, Ryan. Why don't we kneel for this prayer?
Oh, yeah. That's because you're not 60-something years old.
Shauna, will you offer it?
I would love to. Our Father in heaven, we are so very grateful for thy tender mercies and for the release of this wonderful man back to his family. We're thankful for his stand that he has stood in defense of this Constitution and for our liberties and our rights. Please bless us all as we revel in this joyous moment, that he will be able to walk the street and be able to defend himself as he stands to defend others, and that we will be able to together help release these other men that are incarcerated wrongfully. Please forgive us of our sins and bless those children that are on their way here, that they will come in peace and safety, that they might be together again as a family and enjoy those moments. Please help us to always be found doing thy will. We're grateful for this gracious hand that thou hast shown us today as we beg for thee every day to show us the miracles. We're grateful for them. And our gratitude goes to thee, Father, from our very centers of our hearts. Please help them that they help us that we might enjoy this moment and remember to never give up this fight. We will continue to do thy will. We say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Here I am. Yeah, here I'll stay.
Some trails are happy ones, others are blue. Here's a happy one for you. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together? Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again. Happy trails.